It's from Lunamatic. Says, as a store owner, right? I used to own a store. Okay. Don't the brands make you buy all their brands as part of your order? Yes and no. Regardless of the size of your business, your store, companies, which is really important, like FMIC, Fender Musical Instrument Corporation, companies like FMIC, they have multiple brands. Just because you become a dealer with them or have an account with FMIC does not mean you get access to all the brands. It doesn't even mean you get access to all the Fender products. And that is very common in this industry to compartmentalize many things. So the way it works is the way you probably kind of predict it works. Companies that need your business give you access to everything at a very affordable or very low buy-in rate. So like a company, let's say a company, I'm trying to think of a good example. Like US Music Corp. This is a company that doesn't really exist anymore, but they were Washburn Eden at that time, Washburn Eden, Randall, and Parker guitars. They would come to you and the buy-in may be really low. Maybe it's like $5,000. And you can literally cross it across multiple brands. You can go, give me one Parker and give me 2 Eden amps and a Washburn acoustic. And you just buy in. And as far as anyone's concerned on their website, they would list you as a dealer for all of those brands, whether you're buying all those brands or not. And you have access to anything. So if somebody came to your store and you go, do you have a Randall amp? And like, no, but I could order it for you because they could get it. And that would make sense because obviously those brands were, I don't want to say they weren't premium, but they didn't command much more than that. So if you think about brands like that, it makes total sense. Then you take like somebody like perfect example is Fender, which is a very standard procedure the way Fender operates. So Fender not only would say, okay, specialties, which they call it specialty brands, which what currently would now be EVH, Gretsch, Jackson, it's Jackson Charvel, it's one and the same, and Groove Tubes, and what else are they operating? I think I said right. EVH. I'm probably missing one. EVH, Jackson Charvel, Gretsch. I'm repeating. Groove Tubes, and I thought there was one other. Maybe it's because Sun Amps is back now. Sun Amps, okay. That's what's called specialty. So that's a separate rep, separate account, separate everything, credit line, the whole 9 yards. So you could walk into a legitimate Fender dealer with all the Fender brands, and they could have access to no specialty brands whatsoever, and they're not a dealer for that. And the specialty brands would sometimes let you crisscross, like you could buy some Gretsch and then maybe a couple of EVHs, and then if you ever have an order for a Jackson, you take it. But a lot of times they would have buy-ins. Fender, so like I said, this FMIC, Fender on itself is like you can be a Squire dealer but not carry Fender. Okay, you can be Fender accessories. Think about that. You can carry their accessories, their t-shirts, their mugs, their mouse pads, their strings, picks, but not have access to even Squire, none of their product lines. So think about it. So Squire is a buy-in, then accessories is a separate buy-in. Okay. And those usually they require those every year to be re-upped. In other words, you have to buy into each one of those lines. Then in the Fender lineup, just Fender, made in Mexico is its own category. So like you can buy Fender made in Mexico, but you can't buy made in USA. Then Fender made in USA. Fender acoustics is its own category. So if somebody walks in, you could carry, so think of this, you could be a Fender custom shop dealer. It's not likely this will happen, but it's possible. You could walk in a store, have Fender custom shop, because that's a separate buy-in for that SKU. They could have Fender American, they could have Fender made in Mexico, they could have Squire, and you go, I want a Fender ukulele, and they can't order it for you because they don't buy into the acoustic line, and the acoustic line ukuleles would fall under that. So they have to separate buy-in for those things, right? Now I said it's possible, not likely, because usually the way it works is that, you know, it's a top-down thing. Once you're buying in the top, you're buying across all the way down. But each one, so not only are those each, do you need those codes to buy from those categories, but like I said, they can require that yearly for you. And companies do that all the time. They have yearly re-ups, all that stuff. Yeah, it can get a little convoluted and crazy. And this is, like I said, at the smaller level. It gets a little more crazier at the bigger level. So to answer your question, that's the answer to your question. As a store owner, do you buy across the brand? Companies like notorious ones are Mesa Boogie, but I don't know now because Mesa Boogie is owned by Gibson. But back in the day, Mesa Boogie, I can tell you why I was never a Mesa Boogie dealer. Mesa Boogie required $1,500 a buy-in of tubes. And maybe that doesn't sound like a lot of money to you guys, but it's a lot of money for tubes because I sold probably $100 worth of tubes a year. You know, people didn't come to my store looking for tubes. So if I would have tubes and somebody come in and going, I had a gig in my tube, bro, and do you have any tubes? I'm like, yeah, we got some tubes right there, and you get some tubes. But I didn't carry tubes. So when Mesa Boogie's like, yeah, I buy $1,500 of tubes, I'm like, well, I just sell $0 in tubes now. How am I going to go from $0 to $1,500 a year in tubes? And they're like, well, if they buy Mesa Boogie amps, they're going to buy the tubes. I'm like, I guess, right? It was a scary thing. So that's how it works with buy-ins with companies. And a lot of that stuff is actually probably worse now and some of it's better now. So that's how that works. So to buy into the brand, you can. And some companies, like I said, if they need you hard enough, they'll let you buy one thing and then tell people you're a dealer. A funny story, we'll end on this little funny tidbit that happened. I once had a VP for Fender in my store. I was complaining that a dealer had became a Fender accessory dealer. And I was explaining that my issue is that they were only a Fender accessory dealer to tell everybody how bad Fender was. And I said, I don't understand. I said, you do a horrible job at what I just explained to you guys, right? What I just explained to you, I just explained, but most of you probably don't understand that, right? That there's all these buy-ins, all these codes, all this stuff. And so I said, so the store down the road, or not down the road, but the store, the store in town they could sell you picks and strings and t-shirts from Fender, but not Fender product. And he's like, no, I don't think you understand. It's like, we want every dealer to have access to something. And I said, yeah. I said, well, why don't you call that dealer and ask them if they carry Fender? I had no idea if this would work, by the way, but I wanted to see what happens. So he literally gets out his cell phone and he calls the store and he says, hi. And he goes, I'm looking for a Fender guitar and you're listed on Fender's website as a Fender dealer. He was playing dumb, right? And they said, oh, we are a Fender dealer. And he goes, oh, you're a Fender dealer? And they're like, yeah. And he goes, okay, so if I want to buy a Made in Mexico or a Fender American Strat, can I come down and get one? And they go, oh, they're not very good. You should buy a Godin. Because they were a Godin dealer. And he's like, oh, really? And they're like, oh, yeah. And he goes, what's so bad about them? I'm like, oh, yeah, everybody knows they're pretty much junk and Godin is the way to go. We're a dealer, but I just couldn't, like, something about it, I couldn't in good conscience sell you a Fender. And he gets off the phone and he's like sitting there and I'm like, see, I told you. That's what I told him. I go, see, I told you. They only have they only sell your accessories so that they get listed on your website to tell people they're a dealer, and then they're side selling all your customers to somebody else. There you go. I don't know why that story is funny. It always made me laugh. I think it was his face. Like his face when he's like, oh, Fender's horrible, huh? By the way, I don't disagree that Godin's a great guitar against the Fender. I didn't disagree with anything they said. I just thought it was funny that they were actually saying it to the VP at Fender. That was kind of funny. If you enjoyed this podcast clip, you can watch the entire episode by clicking the link in the description or streaming it on iTunes, iHeartRadio, and Spotify. You can also join it live every week, Friday at 3 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, and I hope to see you there. Until next time, know your gear.